government. What is new or would be new is if government actually did something about it. So, it's worth remembering, reminding MPs, reminding IFCAs that this is not new stuff. This has been there for a long time, and you've spent a long time, Mr. MP, Mr. IFCA, not doing anything about it, and that needs to change. Okay, I mentioned otter trawling. Hugh Fearnley-Whittingstall has done a fabulous job at highlighting the issue of discards and scaring the living daylights out of MPs and introducing it as a big part of common fisheries policy reform. They're not going to do anything that is likely to increase discards. And if you start getting into the detail of conversations, people will tell you that, well, if you increase the minimum landing size, you're just going to get more discards, aren't you? Because people will catch more undersized fish and they'll have to throw them back and they'll be dead and whatnot. Well, actually, no. We saw in terms of the UK, the biggest sector that exploits bass are gill nets. If you increase the minimum landing size, at the same time, you bring in a mesh size regulation that increases the mesh size of those nets that are targeting bass to make it bigger. And there's lots of science that isn't on here that shows that those kind of nets are highly selective as to the size of bass that they will retain. So mesh reg sorts out the 40% netting sector. 30% of it was commercial rod and line. Well, we all know if we catch an undersized bass, unhook it, being gentle to it, put it back. And most of the time it's pretty tough fish. It doesn't usually live in deep water. We don't generally catch them in deep water. It should have a high chance of survival. So you're not going to get a discard issue there. 20% of the commercial bass fishery in Britain was otter trawlers. And we've got actually some really quite good information on otter trawlers, because one of those fisheries in the Bristol Channel went for marine stewardship accreditation a few years ago, and there's a 120-page report that you can find on the internet all about it. And I've had some other confidential information from CFAS which basically confirms it, which says that this fishery, it targets the juveniles that are outside the legal bass nursery areas but aren't really adults. It's a bit like targeting teenagers. Teenagers, they all stay together and you all know where they're going to be. And it's kind of the same with these not adult but not really baby bass. They can be targeted, and they're targeted by this kind of fishing. And in the Bristol Channel, there was up to a 90% or more than 90% discard rate, because their catches of bass consist of bass between about 28 centimetres and about 43, 42, maybe 43, 44 centimetres. Virtually nothing smaller, virtually nothing larger. They're catching these kind of adolescent, pre-adult bass. At 36 centimetres, a third of them are over the side, dead mostly. They're caught in trawl nets. But the rest are available for sale. One of the reasons why we didn't get the minimum landing size increase to 40 centimetres back in 2007 is if you'd have pushed the minimum landing size up to 40 centimetres, that discard rate would have gone from 30% to something over 50%. And even then, the minister didn't want to do that. But at 45 centimetres plus, that fishery is catching very, very few bass. So it wouldn't exist, it wouldn't be viable, there wouldn't be enough fish legally saleable to pay for the diesel. So it would stop. And by stopping it, you stop a fishery with a 30% discard rate. You actually, by having a minimum landing size of 45 centimetres or more, reduce discards. It's bizarre. There's an issue with the pear trawl fishery, but that might close anyway. But in this, the 20% of the UK fishery go to 45 centimetre or more MLS, and discards come down. At 40 centimetre MLS, they'll go up. So there's a danger there in small incremental increases.